I'm going to do the best I can to read this report. These are the things that James Cron, the expert in the case with 40 years of experience as a lieutenant in the Dallas police force, then later the commander of the evidence at CSI reports. At the end of his life, he had his own CSI company. He went around the country with David Neighbors, actually. And he went around the country and he actually taught and trained police officers in crime scene investigations. He had seen 23,000 scenes, 4,000 with bodies. Somebody tried to do the math on that one time, but they cannot consider how many of those cases came in one day, 1 week. You can, a CSI can run 5, 6, 7 cases in a day. James Cron is definitely credible. And this is what he sold to the jury that convicted Darlie Routier and all the people for all these years that believe that she is guilty. This is how he did it. They can say whatever they want about James Cron, but he had a lot of insight into that crime scene. File 060696. The official report. Let me put my glasses on here because I'm old. I'm old, people. But quickly. Oh, my glasses need to be cleaned up. Point number 1. The majority of the blood present in the kitchen was at the sink, with bloody bare footprints leading from the sink to the den. It appears the person injured was cut at the sink area. They can tell that by the splatter that was wiped up off the counter, stuff like that. Splatter. It splattered. When you're studying the marks, it's spatter. So there was blood on the counter area that looked like it came from a splurting wound, which is what Darlie had when they did the exploratory surgery on her. They checked those vessels out and she had stopped bleeding shortly after. Okay. Second point. There was broken glass on the kitchen floor. The person leaving the bloody bare footprints should have had cuts on the soles of their feet if they walked on the glass. It appears the glass was placed on the floor after the bloody bare footprints were placed there. That is what it looks like. He's not coming up with some grandiose story. It's exactly what it looks like. If she was going to and fro the sink, which we only see footprints leading fro, she should have stepped on glass. Sharp glass, barefoot. She should have. In the middle of the night, in a panic. Point 3. The position of the vacuum cleaner lying on the kitchen floor on top of the bloody bare footprints appears to have been placed there after the bloody bare footprints were made. And it does appear that way. Very much so. And Cron's not the only investigator that felt that way. See, the devil likes to try and put all this on Cron. But these are all things that many investigators investigated. The windowsill in the garage at the point of entry exit contained undisturbed dust there was no indication of a person went through the window twice. Now, I agree that just because that dust was not touched does not mean that somebody came in or out of that window. Doesn't mean it. But it appears that way. And what Cron was looking for was like grass off a shoe, leaves, something, a shoe mark, anything to show that in the window was the point of entry, point of exit. The undisturbed dust doesn't make or break it, but that's one thing that he brought up. Also, the mulch not being disturbed that was right next to the window in the path of the exit. This is the points that the prosecutor argued based on James Cron's investigation of that case over there at 5801 Eagle Drive. There was no visible blood in the garage, on or around the window, nor the rear patio or gate. It was a bloody mess in there. And what he expected to see was some form of blood that was carried from the scene to the exit in one form or another. Because the intruder, if it was an intruder, they would have had blood on them. If somebody really did come in there and do that, they would have had blood on. There was a bloody mess in there. And there was just no evidence of blood. Now, I know that later on there was a spot of blood on a sign in the garage, but I'll talk more about that later. Mulch between the garage window and the gate was undisturbed. At the early morning hour, I checked the mulch. Any movement through it would have left dampness under the top layer, exposed and visible. Okay, so for all these people, I got into it with Tracy Monet. Because Greg Davis, he said, when you go out that window, when you step out that window, you immediately come to a patch of mulch. And for all these supporters that say, well, there's no mulch under the window. There's no mulch under the window. Tracy's not the only one. There ain't no mulch under that window. Because Greg Davis said, again, when you come to that window, you step out that window, you step immediately into a patch of mulch. This right here makes it perfectly clear that they knew the mulch was between the garage window and the gate. They knew that there was no mulch directly under that window for you stupid ass supporters that do this. I keep saying that. They knew. They knew what they were doing. The few low spots of cast-off blood in the den area was inconsistent with a violent struggle having occurred. The lack of blood on walls, etc., did not indicate a fight involving a knife and injuries took place between two individuals. One of the things that you'll find in an axe murder, which is what myself and Kathy and Sully were discussing, the swing of the axe hit the ceiling in this house. And there was another axe murder where it hit the wall. There would be some kind of evidence of a huge fight, and they did not see it. Although there were bloody bare footprints present, there were no bloody footwear patterns present. He would expect to see more prints from the intruder, especially as, we seen where the blood was. In order to get around that couch and around the other couch to get out, he would have had to step in some blood. That's what he was looking for. A lack of it. If the screen was cut by an intruder, why would an intruder seek a second cutting instrument in the kitchen to use as a weapon? You know, the Darlie Routier supporters hate that serrated knife. They hate that motherfucker. They hate it. That's what tells the story. For me, it's one of the biggest points for me in her guilt. If we didn't have that, we didn't know that there was glass rods and a rubber sealant, and glass particles, like most supporters, they want to overlook that was found in the block. They're just trying to look for ways. Oh no, this fingerprint brush was used over here, and Charles Lynch got them on there. They're looking for a reason. The technicality. If you take that serrated knife out of it, I'd have a huge problem with her being on death row. Two items in the kitchen were disturbed as if a struggle occurred: the wine rack and vacuum cleaner. However, easy to move and fragile articles were close by on the kitchen counter and island work table in the center of the kitchen, which were not disturbed. Just a lack of property damage. Even FBI profiler Alan Brantley said you had the massive amount of destruction to these children and a minimal amount of destruction to the scene. It just didn't look to them like there was a huge fight that went on. The children were attacked first, then the adult. This is inconsistent with this type of assault from an unknown intruder. They would take the worst target out, the oldest target, and if it was for a sexual assault, and there's children involved in that, in almost every case that I've ever read where someone came in the house and children were there, they were used as a pawn to get the female to submit. There's also command. I've never heard of a quiet rapist. They're angry. Those type of sick individuals hate women. And they want to overpower them. So they're going to say some things. Killing two children and then leaving an injured adult witness is inconsistent with this type of assault from an unknown intruder. This is all I have to report at this date. This is pretty plain and simple. But I want the supporters, I'd love for the supporters to come and comment on this. I'd love for them to break this, because this is the report that he gave. Basically, this stuff here, plus there was other evidence that came in from other investigators. But this is what their blueprint. And it's still their blueprint to this day. They can't defeat any one of these points. None. But James Cron had to put on his glasses because, to see. The fuck out of here. From a nurse. Nurse made that comment. So those are Cron's findings.